All right, we are live, and let me see. I see we are not yet live on Instagram. Give me one moment, and then we'll get started with our topic. There we are. All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Start the Week with Spencer. This is our weekly webinar where parents join from around the world and ask questions. These could be questions about children with special needs, the Doman Method, early childhood education, parenting, wherever you're joining from around the world, whether you're joining me on Facebook, Instagram, or on YouTube, go ahead and type your questions into the comments box and I will get to them in order. So today we're going to be starting with a common question that I get. And I actually received it on last week's webinar from Axel, and I wasn't able to answer it. And I felt it was a really good question to kind of start off this week with. So here's the question. Let me just share it up on the screen. So the question that Axel asked was, what do you do with children who have fluid buildup in the ears and or frequent ear infections? Now, I'll tell you the obvious answer, and then I'll tell you the not so obvious answer. So obviously, if a child has frequent ear infections or frequent fluid in the ears, you do have to go to a doctor. You do have to go to an ears, nose, and throat doctor, have your child seen, because very often these children do need intervention. If they have an ear infection, they'll need antibiotics. And while that's not ideal, that's just the situation. And so it's very important, if you have a child with this situation, you have to consult a physician. I'm not a medical doctor, and so I'm a parent coach. So I can't tell you what the treatment would be for those conditions. Now, that being said, I do want to give a very helpful technique that can be done in addition to whatever doctor treatment your child is prescribed, that can help reduce fluid buildup in the ears and can be also very helpful for kids who suffer from chronic ear infections. It can help prevent ear infections, not treat, but it can help prevent them. And this technique is called a eustachian tube massage. So in our ears, there's a tube called the eustachian tube. And the eustachian tube's job is to drain fluid from the ears into the throat. And it's very, very important. If it does not drain fluid properly, the eustachian tubes can back up with fluid. And fluid in the ears can create significant problems for children. The worst thing is that it can lead to alterations in their ability to hear sounds and speech. So especially for kids with special needs who already have difficulty with understanding speech, it could make the situation even worse. Of course, if a child has a chronic problem with this, where they're not hearing speech clearly, it'll affect their own language. So it affects not just comprehension, but speech, because if they're not hearing clearly, they're not going to produce speech clearly. And so that can be a significant problem for kids with special needs, but also well children alike, really delay comprehension and speech development. And then also, if there's a chronic fluid buildup, it can lead to more frequent ear infections. Now, why would their eustachian tubes not be functioning normally? Why would it not be draining fluid properly? Well, many children with special needs have abnormal muscle tone, and the eustachian tube runs along a muscle in the neck. And so if that muscle control is not normal, the eustachian tube can have trouble with draining. And this is both for children who have hypertonia, who are rigid, right, where their muscles are constantly, are spastic. These children can have issues with draining fluid from the ears, but also children who have poor muscle tone, hypotonia. Last week, we had several parents who joined this webinar who had children with Down syndrome who have poor muscle tone, and these children are known for having frequent ear infections and fluid buildup in the ears. Now, there are nutritional things that can be done that can help reduce fluid buildup, and I'm not going to be talking about that today. Those are topics that we cover in our books, the Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness, and also the Answering Autism book, and also in those courses. So in our books and our courses, we talk about the best nutritional programs for kids with special needs. Today, I'm going to just talk about eustachian tube massage, which is something you can do at home starting today, very simple, but can help reduce fluid buildup in the ears. So as I said, the eustachian tubes are drain fluid from our ears, and they run here along this muscle. I'm not sure if you can see this clearly, but there's a muscle here in the neck. It's a very, strong muscle called the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And you can probably see it here in my neck, especially when you turn the head, you can see it very clearly. So the eustachian tube runs along this muscle. And very often it's when children have muscle tone issues in this muscle that it leads to problems with drainage. Okay, so what do? You're going to massage the eustachian tube to help provide it with stimulation that will help it drain fluid better. And by the way, I've had children who had chronic fluid buildup issues, chronic ear infections, who with this regular massage, the problem went away. Okay, so it can be really dramatic in helping kids with this issue. Again, it's not a treatment, it's used for prevention. So what you're going to do this, if you have a child who has fluid buildup issues, frequent ear infections, you're going to take your index and middle finger, and you're going to provide massage along this sternocleidomastoid muscle. You're going to start here, right behind the jaw and below the earlobe. So you're in the right place if you're right behind the earlobe, right behind the jaw. And you're going to provide massage down along this muscle, this sternocleidomastoid muscle, starting behind the earlobe, and you're really going to press strong and stroke downward like this with your child. Now, I recommend you do this for a minute, okay? So a session is 1 minute long, and I recommend you do it 3 times a day. And again, you're just stroking here, really pressing down, all right? This is not meant to be a massage like a comfortable massage. It's meant to be strong because you're trying to, again, massage the eustachian tube, which is below the skin. And so you're going to do this for a minute on one ear, then you're going to turn around and do it for a minute on the other ear, okay? And again, you're going down along that muscle. 3 times a day, both ears for 1 minute each. And yeah, like I said, I've had some families that children dealt with chronic ear infections, and just doing this eustachian tube massage helped prevent them because the child was finally getting that fluid drainage that they needed. What happens is the fluid drains out of the ear into the throat, and the child doesn't have this fluid buildup issue. All right, Axel, I hope you find that helpful. Please try it with your child. Let me know if it helps in reducing the fluid buildup. As I said, this is not a replacement for consulting a doctor. It's something that can be done in addition to the treatment recommended by your doctor. All right, now I'm going to open this up to questions from the audience. So whether you're joining me on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, go ahead and start typing your questions into the comments. By the way, I know I talked specifically about children with special needs, but that eustachian tube massage could be done with any child with fluid buildup issues, including well neurotypical kids. While I'm waiting for the next question to come in, Flowers is asking, can you repeat, please? So Flowers, this video, in fact, all of my webinars are saved both on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So you can come back and watch these later at any time. You could save this video, for example. So after this webinar, just go back to the Doman International Instagram page, since you're on Instagram, and you'll see the video posted there. Oksu is saying, hi, Spencer, where can you talk about children exercises? Well, Oksu, there are basically 3 places. The first is here in this webinar. I talk, I give parents answers to questions. Second of all is in our books, right? So we have books like the Answering Autism book for parents of children with kids with autism. We have the Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. These are our two main books that parents read to kind of gain knowledge about our programs. And then last but not least, we have our courses. And so our two main courses for parents are the Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness and the Answering Autism course. Both of these online courses actually, interestingly, are starting today. So we actually have, I think, something like 40 some families starting our courses today. The parents of children with autism are starting the Answering Autism course, and then parents with other diagnoses or other developmental delays are attending the Doman Method course. And so we have parents from around the world attending those courses. By the way, our courses are currently in 6 languages: English, Spanish, Italian, Russian, Serbian, and Arabic. So they're available in all of those languages. So yeah, parents, who want to learn more should absolutely enroll for those courses. And if you're interested in learning more, just send us a message through Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, and one of our representatives will get back to you. Marcia is asking about the eustachian tube massage that I showed before. Is it applicable for kids with cerebral palsy with stiffness and spasticity in the neck? Absolutely. Yeah, I've known many children with cerebral palsy, with stiffness and rigidity, who can absolutely be helped. And it's for the reason that I said, because they have abnormal muscle tone and spasticity in the neck, the eustachian tube is not draining fluid from the ears. And so providing that massage can really be helpful. All right. I have a question here from Ruth. Ruth says, "Hi, Spencer. How are you? My son learned to read using the Doman Method. However, we haven't gotten the conversation with him. I'm reading your book now, but I wonder if with the whole program, we can get him to get the conversation we are desperately looking for." Okay, so Ruth, if I understand your question correctly, we're talking about speech development here. Speech delay is probably the most common concern that Doman International hears from parents of children with developmental concerns. Now, you didn't say in your message how old your child is. And that would be helpful information for me to have, because based on your child's age, I can actually tell you where your child should be in speech development. Because obviously, if a child is 12 months old and if a child is 3 years old, my answer would be a bit different for those two kids. So if you could tell me the child's age, that would be helpful. Okay, Ruth is saying he's 6 years old. Okay, Ruth. So I'm presuming that you are reading either the Doman Method book or the Answering Autism book. Could you just clarify for me which book you're talking about? But in the book specifically, there are speech development techniques that are recommended. So, for example, in our book Answering Autism, there is a chapter on speech development, which is chapter 8. So chapter 8 of the Answering Autism book gives specific programs and techniques to improve speech development for children with speech delay. If you're reading the Doman Method book, it is, give me one moment. I believe it is section 5, I believe. Give me one moment, hold on. I grabbed the wrong language book, that's why I couldn't give you a clear answer. Yeah, so sorry, section 3 of the Doman Method book, the Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness, section 3, chapter 10 is all about speech development and communication for kids. So whichever book you're reading, okay, Ruth says that she's reading my grandfather's book, What to Do About Your Brain Injured Child, and she's reading now Answering Autism. So yeah, listen, you could, since you're really most interested in speech development, you can feel free to skip forward and read the speech development chapter just to kind of get it out of the way. And, I know what it's like when you're very eager to learn about one part of the program. But that being said, I would not skip the other chapters. I would still read all of them because, if your child is 6 years old, the different chapters in these books are going to be really helpful for you. The mobility development chapters, the nutrition chapters, I know you taught your child to read, but the reading chapter is very helpful. The social chapter, all of those things will also apply to your child. And so I definitely recommend, Ruth, that that you read that. I'm not sure if you're reading the English version or the Spanish version. Answering Autism has been translated into both languages. So has the Doman Method book. But I would, for starting off, Ruth, I would recommend you begin with the books, and you just start implementing those techniques. We have if you're interested specifically in attending our course, as I said, our English courses just started, and our next English course is not until November. We do have Spanish courses in the meantime, and I'm not sure, Ruth, exactly what languages you speak, but if you're interested in learning more about that course, I can have one of our representatives reach out to you. All right. In the speech development chapter, we cover things like how to use rhymes and songs to develop speech. We also cover a topic called the language board, which is a technique, something simple you can do in your home, which is really good for fostering speech development in children. We also talk about a communication technique called the choice board, which can be very helpful. So hopefully you'll find those books to be very helpful for you, Ruth. All right. I'm now opening this up for more questions. Ruth says she's bilingual, but she's in the Dominican Republic. Ruth, out of interest, did you learn about our program from my interview on Dominican television with El Mañanero, or did you find out about us from some other source? Because I recently, maybe 2 months ago, I did an interview on television in the Dominican Republic. I did it in Spanish too, so I had the chance to practice my Spanish a little bit. All right. Let's see who else has a question. Remember, you could ask any question about, it could be child development, kids with special needs, the Doman Method. I'm open to any questions. For everyone who's joined late, I started off the session today by talking about something called a eustachian tube massage. If your child has any issues with fluid buildup in the ears or ear infections, I recommend it. And also, if you'd just like to know a kind of holistic technique you could do in the future if your child ever has those issues, I recommend you go back and you watch the beginning of this webinar. Ruth says she learned about our program from other parents and also watched our interview. Okay, great. Wonderful. All right, I have a question here from Annabella. What is your opinion about using AAC for alternative communication? So, whenever we're looking at different communication programs, these are kind of programs that are used typically with children with speech delay or children with autism. And there are many different kinds of alternative communication techniques that can be used with kids with special needs. We use two specifically at Doman International. One is called the choice board, which is a simple technique where you write choices on a board for a child and the child can point to the options on a board. And we do that specifically with children with no speech or with poor speech, just to give them a way to communicate. Of course, we don't give up on speech development. We have specific programs that we do with children to help them learn to speak. This is really meant for the meantime to give the children another way to communicate their thoughts and feelings. Then we have another communication program called Facilitated Communication, which is a typing program using a keyboard or a letterboard, which we do with children who are older and who are able to read and spell, but unable to communicate their thoughts and ideas. And by the way, even if a child cannot read or spell yet who's older, we can teach them to read and teach them to spell with our Doman Method cognitive programs. And again, that's a very good way of giving children with speech challenges a way to really communicate advanced and sophisticated ideas that they have that they can't speak. Because nearly all of the children that we see, their understanding level is up here, but their speech level is down here. And so these kind of alternative communication practices are really good for this gap, to help children show how smart they are until their speech is at the point where they can communicate all of their thoughts and feelings and needs. So we use these different kinds of techniques. Now, when I look at what is used out there basically in therapy, one of the most common techniques, for example, is called PECS, PECS. It's a picture communication system for kids. There are things I like about it. There are things I don't like about it. For example, I like that kids are given ways of communicating. That's positive, right? It's always good to give kids ways of communicating, but it's very limited. For example, children are just limited in that system by the pictures that they're provided. So for example, a child might be able to say they want food, but they may not be able to communicate that they want to go to the playground or go see grandma, because that's not one of the pictures that's given to them as an option. So it's very limited, and that can be a problem. Things like, sorry, I'm trying to think of the word, things like sign language, for example. Again, one of the things I really like about sign language, one of the ideas of sign language for kids is it's based on the idea that children are smart and have a lot to communicate even if they can't speak. That's a great thing. But the problem is with sign language is many children get stuck using the signs and they don't develop speech. And one of the reasons for that is it's just a aspect of being a child, right? Children and usually adults will always do whatever's easiest. And so if they're able to simply sign something, which they can easily do with their hands, they don't have a need to develop speech. And so for children with speech challenges, we need to give them needs to talk. And so if they have no need, they often will not go through the work of developing their own speech. So that's why, for example, we give parents speech development techniques to motivate the child to talk. And we tend to avoid a lot of these other communication methods that we find often remove the need for speech. The choice board and facilitated communication, one of the great things about these communication programs is parents can use them to communicate with the child, but it's really when parents are ready to ask the child a question. And so the child still has a need to communicate their thoughts and ideas because it's not something that can be used as a crutch anytime the child wants to talk, like sign language could, right? Because the child can, whenever they desire to, can rely on the sign language. So hopefully that answers your question, Annabella. We do want to give kids ways of communicating, but we really stick to specific programs that cannot become a replacement for speech. Hopefully that sounds reasonable. All right. Colleen, hi. I see Colleen has joined me here. Colleen, I hope everything's going well.
Yeah, everything's great. Thanks.
Colleen, I have a quick question for you that came up with a mom here named Ruth. I was saying the next English course starts in November.
November 4th.
November 4th. Thank you. By any chance, do you know when the next Spanish course starts?
The next Spanish course will begin on, I think it's October. Yes, October 7th.
October 7th. Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to provide that info. Colleen, do you mind giving, if people are interested in the English course, do you mind giving your contact info? And then if they want to learn more about the Spanish course, what they could do?
Absolutely. So there are a few different ways. You can always send us a direct message through Instagram, because several members of staff monitor those direct messages. If you're interested in the English course, I would answer you. If you're interested in the Spanish course, we would make sure that Marialba, who is our Spanish language representative, gets in touch with you. So if you want to just send us a DM, that's easy. You can do it on Facebook as well. Or you can email me. My email address is info, I-N-F-O, @domaninternational.org. And again, if it's in Spanish, I will forward it on to Marialba. Don't worry. If it's in English, then I'll answer you myself. Or if you're in India, then I will forward your information to Jagjit Kaur, who is our representative and a staff member in India.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Colleen.
You bet.
And I'm just going to put up Colleen's email address just so that people can see it. And then, Colleen, if you typed your phone number into the comments, I could share it up on the screen if that's possible. All right. Let's see. Does anyone else have a question? By the way, for everyone who's joining late, I spoke at the beginning of this presentation about what to do for children who have fluid buildup in the ears or chronic ear infections. So if that's an issue and you joined a bit later, I was also saying that these videos, these webinars are saved on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So if you ever want to go back and listen again in the future, they're always there. All right. I see Colleen's number here. I will share it. Okay. There it is. Okay. There is Colleen's phone number if you want to get in touch with her. All right. Who else has a question? They could be questions about kids with special needs, child development, parenting. Annabelle is saying we can't wait to meet you very soon in Florida. Yeah, so Annabelle, I look forward to seeing you too. So for everyone, some of you may not be aware of this, we are organizing Miami evaluations this month in August, on August 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. So yeah, I'm going to be going down to Miami. We're having families come, not just from Florida, but from Central America to have evaluations there. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's our first time ever doing appointments in Florida, which is very exciting. It's always exciting to open up a new location. And we've chosen Florida specifically because it is so easily accessible for families in Central and South America. You can basically find flights from all over the Americas to Miami. So it's an easily accessible location. And then also Florida is one of the most highly represented states on our program. So when there's demand, we will send a staff member to go. Very, very much looking forward to that. All right. In terms of our different Doman International locations, just to give everyone an update of where Doman International is currently seeing families. So our headquarters are based here in Philadelphia, which is on the East Coast of the United States, just a couple hours from New York. That's where me and many of our staff and directors are located. But in the US, we see families at different times of the year in California, which our West Coast families will often come and see us there in June and December. Now we've added Miami for Floridians and Central and South Americans to come and see us there. In addition, in Europe, we see families at our European headquarters in Italy. So families come from around Europe and also the Middle East to see us there. We just did appointment trip to Italy. So, and we'll be going back in October. So any Europeans who are interested in having their children assessed, we do have some spots for October appointments. We do appointments in Serbia and Croatia for families in the Balkans. We do appointments in Russia and India. We have local staff in those countries, also in the Philippines, Australia, and New Zealand. So I believe that's 10 different locations that I just listed. We see families there in those different locations at different times of the year when we send staff there. But if you're interested in any of those locations, reach out to us and we'll get you details. Okay. Well, I'm waiting for other questions. Colleen, if you don't mind, I'll bring you back up.
Sure.
Colleen, just because you speak to so many families for the first time, I'm wondering, are there any common questions that you get from parents? Any common first questions that you get that you think might be valuable for us to talk about here on the webinar?
Definitely. So I guess the number one question I get from most parents is what makes the Doman method different from the types of therapies that they've already been recommended or that they've already started based on the advice of their doctor or therapist.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So, all right, what makes the Doman method unique? Well, there are many things, but let's kind of look at some of the most important. So the first thing that I would say is, for the last 70 years, the Doman method has helped more kids with special needs to learn to walk, talk, succeed in school and in life than any other methodology out there. And so what that means is a lot of experience with tens of thousands of kids with special needs. And that experience isn't just based on knowing what works. It's also based on the experience of learning what doesn't work. And, we always say to the parents in the Doman method course, look, we're teaching you the best programs for your children, but we're not going to waste your time with the dozens or hundreds of things that we've tried that didn't help kids. And so that's one of the great benefits of experience. And also with having staff who are able to pass down knowledge from generation to generation, right? Because my grandfather started this work in the 1950s, and he and the team that he worked with were able to pass that knowledge down to my parents, for example, Douglas and Rosalind Doman, who have been doing this work for 45 years. And then we're able to learn from them. And that's very helpful because, it's good to know what works, but also, oh, hey, we tried this kind of thing already and it didn't work. Let's not waste time with that. Let's find something else. So the first thing is experience. And I would say an experience of getting results with children. And that was very much based on my grandfather's philosophy of we only do things that get results with kids, because that's how he came out of the realm of physical therapy, where he learned many things in school that didn't help kids. And so that created a lifelong mission for him to find things that worked. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we understand that children with special needs have an innate intelligence. And this is something that is rarely understood in the professional world, that children who could have significant sensory problems, behavioral issues, speech problems, can also be highly intelligent. They just have great difficulty in expressing themselves. And so because we understand that, it opens up an entire realm of treatments, because we know kids are smart. We just have to help unleash that intelligence, and allow them to express it. And that's something, if I speak to most parents and I say to them, is your child smart? They'll tell me, even if they've been told 100 times that their child is stupid by a professional, they'll say to me, yeah, I know my kid's smart because I see it in their eyes. And that's a very simple thing, right? I see it in my child's eyes, but it's also profound because the eyes are in many ways the center of consciousness. It's our way of knowing if someone's there or not. And so parents say, I know my kid's smart. I can see it in his eyes. He may not be able to talk, but he's there. And so we understand that. And so because we understand that, over 70 years, we've been able to create a lot of programs that help children learn faster and express themselves faster. And then I'd say the third thing is we work hand in hand with families, right? We understand that parents have information and knowledge about their children that's going to be crucial for us to design the best treatment program for a child. And many professionals don't understand that. They think that parents are kind of inconveniences that they have to deal with in their job, like, oh, this is someone who's just complaining, but the problem is, first of all, they don't listen to the parents because they don't realize that the parents have something very valuable. And it's kind of obvious when you think about it. The person who is with the child more than anyone else knows the child better than anyone else. And so they're going to have invaluable information that you need to get from them. But a lot of professionals don't get that. And so we work hand in hand with parents. We hear from parents, what are the biggest problems the child faces? And then we teach the parents, these are the things you have to do to address those biggest underlying problems. And then that is a process of communication back and forth that never ends on our program, in the sense we tell families what to do, and then the parents give us feedback. And they'll say, oh, these things are working. Oh, here's the issues that we're facing with this specific problem. And then we're really there to help coach them through those things. But it's, for that reason, we look at it more as a partnership. For the child, we bring the knowledge and experience, parents bring the love and dedication. And when you put those things together, you get really, really good results. So that would be my long answer to your question, Colleen. It's the experience of getting results. It's the understanding children have innate intelligence and helping unleash that intelligence, and then working hand in hand with families.
Fantastic. I would call it in depth more than a long answer. And I think parents appreciate that, because one of the common critiques, I guess, I hear from parents about their experience in the outside, with other treatments or therapies or therapists and professionals, is that they don't feel as if they're heard in the way that they don't get as much in-depth information as they would like. And they don't get that kind of respect from the professionals, even when they're very nice. It's a little bit of a surface thing, like, oh yeah, okay, mom, I hear you, but I'm the expert and I know what I'm doing. And it's only after time sometimes that parents are like, wait a minute, you might know what you're talking about, but you don't know my kid.
Yeah. And I recently, well, by recently, probably it was a year or two ago, I wrote up a blog post. I'll have to dig this out, and it might be a good topic for a future webinar, of 5 things that parents should search for in finding professionals for their child. And obviously I'm biased. I think the team at Doman International is best, but I felt that the information was still important for parents to have, even if they decided not to do our program. But you kind of mentioned 2 of the 5 things that I talked about, which, number one, if the professional doesn't listen to you, as my grandfather would say, you shouldn't, don't walk, run to the nearest exit. And it's not just a matter of finding someone who's respectful. That's really important. But it's actually because if someone doesn't listen to you, it means they're not open to learning. And many of the best techniques that we've added to the Doman Method over the last 5 to 10 years are actually things our parents have brought to us. So we've learned a lot from our parents, and or that we were able to develop with the help and feedback of our parents. Mm-hmm. And so if someone is not listening to you, that means that they probably haven't listened to the 1,000 families that they spoke to before you. Yeah. And so they didn't learn from any of those experiences. And so that's the first big thing. And then the second thing you kind of mentioned, Colleen, are professionals who kind of gaslight parents. When parents say, oh, I've observed this with my child, or I'm concerned about this, and the professional kind of waves it off as, oh, no, that's not an issue, or they don't provide any kind of clear, helpful answer. Usually that's actually a reflection of the professional not having an answer to that question. You know, my grandfather said one of those moments, eye-opening moments for him, was he was doing physical therapy with a stroke patient, and the stroke patient's granddaughter happened to be standing there with the rest of the family as he was going through the motions. And my grandfather intuitively knew the things he was doing with these brain injured patients wasn't helping them, but he didn't know why or what to do differently. So he was going through with what he had been trained to do, which is what most people do. And the granddaughter to the patient said to my grandfather, she said, I thought my grandfather had a stroke in this part of his brain. And my grandfather said, yes, that's right. And she said, so if that's the case, like, why do you keep moving his arm back and forth, right? If his problem is in the brain, why are you moving his arm? And my grandfather had no answer for her. And he did what many professionals do. He said to her, oh, you'd have to go to school for years to understand why you do that. And that ate away at him for kind of the rest of his life. I mean, he talked about that experience until the day he died, because I think he kind of realized, you know, he didn't have answers, and that really bothered him. So parents really need to be on the lookout for those kind of answers of kind of waving off. You know, I wish more professionals said, I don't know. I think that would be more helpful to parents than giving an answer which is unhelpful, or some professionals give advice which is not at all scientifically based. It's just, the one that drives me the most crazy is when a parent asks, why is my child not speaking? And the professional says, oh, it's because you speak multiple languages in the household, something like that. And it's completely unscientific. It's just a myth that's been made up. But no one thinks that someone with an advanced degree is going to just make something up off the top of their head. But unfortunately, when people don't have answers to things, it's uncomfortable to sometimes say, I don't know, and I had a family in my office last week, and I said to them, that's the first time I've ever been asked that question. It's rare that I get asked questions now I've never heard, but it comes up once in a while. And I said, I don't know, but let me look into it and see if I can figure this out. So it's hard. It's hard for people to admit they don't know.
It's important too to think, or to remind yourself that even professional people, if they're afraid to say, I don't know, they can repeat a myth that they've heard, thinking, well, I guess that never having even really thought about it. But, that's just something that we tell people. It's,
right.
As you said, the multiple languages myth, it's been handed down and it refuses to die. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We're getting some feedback on Instagram. Annabella said, so Colleen, referring to your question, she said that was the first question I asked myself 3 years ago. And then we got a comment from another parent who said, my grandson learned to read and write with this method. Thank you. It's amazing. That's wonderful. And so for, specifically about the comment about reading and math and writing, if parents don't have children with special needs and they're interested in learning more about the Doman Method just for early childhood education, there is a website called domanlearning.com. Doman Learning is kind of a sister company to Doman International, where we provide courses and materials for parents to teach their young children to read and do math and do other exceptional things with the Doman Method. So, feel free to look into domanlearning.com if you want to learn more about those things.
I can vouch for that.
Oh, thank you.
I learned to read with the Doman Method. My daughter learned to read with the Doman Method. All of my siblings learned to read with the Doman Method. So it really does work. I know
Yeah.
you did too, Spencer.
So did
but
I. So
my
did
name
I.
isn't
Yeah.
Doman, so it's definitely a real and effective way of learning.
Yeah. At some point on another webinar, Colleen, we'll have to do one just us talking about our experience growing up on the program.
That would be fun.
All right. Everyone, I'll give everyone 1 or 2 more minutes just to type any more questions that they have into the comments box. Whether you're joining me on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, you can just type your question in and we will get to it, when you send it in. And just to let everyone know, this webinar is hosted every Monday at this time. It's 11 a.m. Eastern time. Eastern time is the New York time zone, so you can kind of put into your schedule, whatever time zone you're in. It's this time every Monday. And we're going to do our best to do this as frequently as possible. The only time I will sometimes cancel it is if I'm traveling, and usually that's because we're seeing families in other parts of the world, and it may just be impossible to do that week. But fortunately for, I believe, the rest of August and for most of September, I will be home and able to do this session weekly. All right, I see no more questions, so I guess we'll finish off with that. So everyone, I'll be back here next week, and hope to see you all then. Thanks so much. Thanks, Colleen. Bye, everyone.